Okay, now that we have our finger assembled, we'll go ahead and add in the servo for this piece. Now, the other fingers you built, if you're building the hand kit, you will have taken them to this point where you have not attached the base plate because you do not have a base plate, as if the finger is meant to attach to the palm and not a single finger kit. So you should have fingers in this state. This is an index finger. Each one of those fingers will have a few leftover screws, which are used to hold in the servo and to bolt the finger to the palm, along with the servo that goes with that finger. So we'll talk about this stuff when we start assembling the fingers to the palm. But on the thumb, the servo actually rides on the thumb assembly, so when you rotate, the servo goes with it. So let's look into that. Let's see. Now this is the same process that we used when we assembled the servo and finger for the finger kit. So we'll go ahead and open it up and we'll dump out our hardware. Now for the thumb, you use the same pieces, so these two double-sided horns aren't needed, so those can go away. What is needed is the short horn and the screw to hold the horn on. Now, you have these two leftover large washer head screws. We're going to go ahead and make sure we hold on to all of those. We're actually going to use a couple of these a little bit later in the arm. So if you're building an arm kit, those are going to come in handy a little later. Okay, we're going to set that stuff aside. Now, so the first thing we need to do is we will go ahead and start with the servo here. I'm going to pull that. I like to just flatten out the wire a little bit. And as I did before, I like to take this wire just to make things neat, and I like to just kind of pull it straight down over top the servo. And when we do that, we take a little piece of tape here, and I tend to do this before I put the servo in. I just kind of pull that wire flat like that, and then I just center the tape, and I stick it over the wire, smooth it down, and fold it down the sides. And what that does is that just maintains that wire down the bottom of the servo, bringing it out the back where it'll travel down the palm. This servo again, you want to go ahead and stick the wire through the hole and drop it in. Now as these servos go in, they always go in with the servo horn, the spline for the horn, closest to the finger. So they drop in like that, and you just kind of rock them in. You'll have to kind of pull that servo wire flat again and put the side with the servo wire coming out in first, and then just kind of rock it in. It's a tight fit, but it goes in there. We'll go ahead and, of our hardware we're going to find our two 256 screws, and those are going to use our middle size Allen key. And again, they're going to be a little tight going through the body of the servo, so we just kind of screw them in through the body of the servo, and they'll just pop through into the wood there. And then we're going to take our small 256 screws again. We got to make sure that we use the 256 screw that fits the screw and not the one for the ball. Now I can tell by looking at them that the smaller nut here is the one that fits our ball, and so I'll slide that aside and get the two that look similar. Those are the nuts for the 256 screws. Just kind of put them in place here. A little bit of fumble fingers and screw that in there. And do the same for the front side. This one's a little tougher to get in because you've got your finger assembled. But what I like to do is screw it in till it just starts to pop out, back it off a little, and then I kind of slide the nut in there. And then just kind of position it around with a wrench. And then you'll need to just kind of hold it in place. That's a little tougher. Oh, right. We can fold this joint up, and that'll expose the nut a little better from the other side. So once you get it kind of in place, you can place your finger on it, flip it over, and then screw it in. And the threads will catch, and then the nut will stay in place. Just just want to tighten that all the way down. Again, these can be tricky. Take your time, go back and forth, use a little tape on the end of your wrench, or whatever you need to do to get those in there. But those two nuts will secure the servo to that plate. And we can turn that back flat. And then the last thing we need to do here for the thumb assembly is go ahead and prep the servo horn for the ball. And again, just take your hobby knife. Wow, this one's got the tip broken off, but we're going to go to the third hole in from the tip, 1, 2, 3, and we're just going to kind of start to open up that hole a little. My fingers are slippery. And again, I just kind of rotate my knife in there, then flip it over and come from the other side and rotate the knife in there. We're just trying to make that hole slightly big enough so that when we screw in the ball stud, it goes in nicely. Again, we're going to screw the ball stud in from the bottom. So if you're going to have the hole a little bit bigger, it's better to have it a little bit bigger from the bottom side. And we're going to use a wrench. Now, I originally said this was a 16th inch wrench, and I am not correct. I actually had it mislabeled in my kit. It is actually a 1.5 millimeter wrench. This is a metric ball. This is a 1.5 millimeter metric wrench. I could not find any standard wrench that would fit that guy, so you may have to pick yourself up at least a single 1.5 millimeter metric wrench for these ball screws. And again, I just kind of push and twist, and eventually the threads of the ball will catch in there. And screw that bad boy through. And once I got it through, we put the nut on the back side. And while holding this, take my little pliers here and just kind of give that a good tighten. We want that to be pretty tight. Okay, then we can take and find the larger side of our rod end, and we snap the ball in there, and then bring it down and drop it on our horn. And that gives us a moving thumb, like so. Now obviously, when you connect up your servos, you'll have to deal with centering the horn and setting your controls, whether it be a radio, an Arduino, whatever you might be using to control, you know, setting those controls to not overextend the servo in either direction, but that comes a little later. So for now, I just like to snap it on there, and then I go ahead and put the screw in there because I don't want to lose the screw. I'll screw the screw for the horn down in, and call that good. So there you go. That is the assembly process for the thumb. What we'll be doing next is we'll use these leftover 2 screws, 2 nuts, and 2 washers to attach this little thumb pad here to the portion of the palm that we're going to build next. So that completes the assembly of the thumb. Again, please, you'll have the we'll have some exploded view references to look at as we build this. But for now, we're going to set that down, and we'll be back to build the palm in our next video. Again, hope you enjoyed that, and thank you.